Hey there, and welcome to Story Demon. Last episode, we talked about protagonists, good guys, heroes. Today, we're going to talk about antagonists, villains, bad guys. Again, what I'm about to tell you is not gender specific, it's universal. And you can apply it to any of your villains, even if you have a cartoon with animals. This will all still work. This is universal, applies to the concept of villain as the protagonist stuff applied to the concept of good guy, hero, protagonist. So, what makes a good bad guy? I would say if you have to have one thing, it's clarity of purpose and mission. What do they want? Why do they want it? How are they trying to get it? If you can answer those questions about your villain, in general, your villain can be at least decent. There's more nuance, I feel, to the villain than there is the hero, because they're doing something out of the norms in general. They're killing, they're kidnapping, they're robbing, they're undermining. And even if it's not a good guy, bad guy movie, in the classic sense, it was more of a drama. They're still undermining people emotionally. They're manipulating emotions. These are things that people, outside of the norms would do. It takes, these are traits of somebody who would be a negative person. So the reasons why they're negative and all these things I just mentioned need to be clear. Is it for revenge of a past transgression? Is it because of greed? Were they raised poor and never had money, and by God, they're going to have money? Is it they never could have a kid, and so they kidnapped somebody else's kid? I mean, what is it? Die Hard, they're robbing the bonds. They get there's untraceable bonds in the safe, and they're robbing it. Simple as that. Darth Vader wants to conquer the universe. Simple as that. When it gets convoluted is when villains, bad guys don't work. Now, that number one being clarity of purpose, I would say after that is probably their personality matters in some ways even more. Do you want the suave, debonair villain that is charismatic and attractive but does things repulsively? Do you want so drippingly evil, frothing at the mouth evil, like an alien would be, from the movie Aliens? You want that kind of evilness where they're just a killing machine. You want that type of a thing. This is where the nuances start happening with a villain. But again, if it's clear, you can start adding these nuances. So the alien in Aliens movies, that's simple. They are basically bugs, and they're trying to breed and make more bugs. That's it. Preservation of their species. So they lay an egg. The thing goes onto a host. The host then produces an alien. They want to replicate that like ants. And you have a queen ant, and so you have a queen alien, and her job is to make more eggs, and then they find hosts. So they want to get to places where they can have plenty of hosts. So that's their purpose, is to preservation of species. Thanos is a good example of a villain in the last few years, because when he shows up, to me, I'm talking about Infinity War and the two piece Avengers movies. I'm speaking of those, not anything really before that. But that Thanos is simple. He needs all of the Infinity Stones, and then he wants to reset the universe by wiping out half the population of everything so that things can grow and be anew. And that's what he wants. You don't have to agree with it, you don't have to like it, but his purpose is clear. He wants to reset to the universe, and that's how he's getting us through Infinity Stones. Clear purpose, and their job as the heroes is to stop that. He's stopping from the Infinity Stones, and then when he does wipe out half the universe, it's how do we undo that? So that's what those two movies are about. Really clear. All the nuances are add-on layers. That's great, but the basic boiled down to points is that. This is one of the reasons why some of these tropes are repeated so often, because they're just not easy to go to. And as us, you want to make what the villain wants to be somewhat relatable. Even the aliens you can relate with, because we understand continuing your species. We understand you want to keep your species going. We wouldn't do it that way, obviously, but I mean, conceptually, it's totally grabbable. It's fathomable. Wanting to reset the universe, yeah, you can kind of get that. Yeah, things are crazy, man. You wouldn't agree with it, you would not do it, but you get it. You understand how Darth Vader, the Emperor, would be power hungry and want to control everything and have in their clutches all the things that control it. You can get it conceptually. Hans Gruber, Die Hard. You can understand wanting a whole lot of money. These are things that make really good villains. So that clarity purpose creates a relatability in what they're trying to do. Again, don't agree with it. Now take it a step further into a little more sinister villain. Take it to Hannibal Lecter in the Silence of the Lambs movies. Just go to the Silence of the Lambs movie itself. It's hard to relate to a cannibal, but in that movie, you could get that he would want out of that prison. That's basically what he's trying to do in that movie. Is Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs is trying to get out of custody and get the hell away from being a captive in prison. We can relate to that sense. Can't relate to cannibalism. Well, I hope you can't. And the killing, hope you can't relate to all that. But we understand wanting to get out of a situation, and his using any means to do so. Even Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs is relatable because he's wanting to be something that he is not. How he's getting there is extreme and something we would not do or relate to in his methods. But the general purpose of trying to transform from one thing into another, the concept of the insect going into the cocoon and coming out a different insect, that's a relatable thing. We wouldn't do it that way. I hope you wouldn't do it that way. But that conceptual bottom line thing is relatable. So there's a lot more nuances to the bad guy. You have to put a lot more thought into him. It's easier in a lot of ways to endear a character than it is to fear a character. It takes the best movies have the best villains. The weakest movies have the weakest villains. Simple as that. You can go back to old movies, you can go back to current movies, you can go back to whatever you want to. It's generally true. You remember Die Hard, partially because Hans Gruber is so awesome. You remember the Harry Potter movies just because Voldemort, that villain is like he's like, well, you were scared of that guy. You can see how you're fearful that Harry Potter can't overcome that guy. He's very powerful and very evil. So those movies are hinged a lot on. He's so feared they won't speak his name. All those things, those nuances going to the bad guy help raise up the story and raise up Harry Potter. Partially makes him more endearing. So the villain will prop up the hero in a large sense. If you go down the list of movies or read your books, your classic literature, villain is going to be a major part of it. I mean, villain action figures sell for a reason. Okay. I've got bad guy helmets behind me for a reason, because the stormtroopers they're kind of cool. They're cool looking. They got cool equipment. And I know they're the henchmen, the foot soldiers of the bad guys. And so the Empire is such a strong villain that, it's captivating. It captures the senses. It captures the imagination of something so powerful out there, imposing its will on the things. That power can be big, like the universe with the Empire, or it can be small with a serial killer trying to transform himself from one thing to another. That imposing of power is an attractive thing. But you vicariously live through it. We go to the movies to live vicariously. We identify with the hero because they're ass kicked, but there's something vicarious for the villain that does these things. You kind of, when the bad guy, punches somebody, something you wish that, I wish I could do something like that sometime, blows up something, I get so bad sometimes, I wish I could just blow up that thing. And they do these things, and you vicariously live through them. You wouldn't act on them, and God hope you don't act on them in the real world, but it's like a pressure relief valve for your audience that somebody's doing these things, and you don't like them, you don't want them to win, but it satisfies this weird animal thing that we have deep in us. So that living vicariously. So the more charismatic a villain is doing these evil things, the higher our connection goes with them. You go look at other movies out there, and you think about, well, who is the bad guy? I mean, movies that are more forgettable, it always hinges on the bad guy. I mean, you remember The Dark Knight because Heath Ledger's the Joker was so freaking good. He was so well thought out, and he was genuinely he genuinely created a fear because he was unpredictable and would do things that you wouldn't see coming, and he didn't have rules that he followed like a normal person. On the other hand, he was attractive because he said things that you wish you could say sometimes. That's the speech in the hospital where he says, the world doesn't care that a truckload of soldiers gets blown up, but you kill one guy, one little mayor, and there's panic in the streets. And that's a true observation. We would say, okay, yeah, I see that happens, and I've had that same complaint in my head. So there's a connection that happens with the villain in a weird way. God help you. I hope you never do them, but the connection is there. So clarity of purpose, the connection, all of these things with your villain can go into creating the best villain. If you go down the list, a good exercise is to make a list of movies that you remember. And then when you want to make that list, think about the villain. And you'll see a lot of times the reason you remember it is because of that villain. Go back to older movies. This is all true. This is a universal thing. If you spend a little longer on your villain crafting them, write a backstory, whatever it takes to get that done for yourself. You need to go into material knowing who your bad guy is in some ways more than you know who your good guy is. In my book I'm working on now, I wrote the first draft, and I realized there was something not enough with my bad guy. He was a bad guy. He did bad guy things, and I think he worked, but I don't think he went to the next level that I wanted it to be. So on the subsequent draft, I added another layer to his persona to give me more of a representation of his evil and the deterioration of his mind, that doing more outlandish things. So, and I'm telling you, it just adding that one layer to the character, the villain character, I think elevated the material. Time will tell when people read the book, but that's a step I took in my own writing to elevate it. So think about the things, do plot points, do a backstory, do a bullet point what your bad guy is and what they want. And just take that extra step, take an extra draft, take an extra whatever it needs to hone in on your villain. And if you do that, the whole material will pay off that much better. It's so worth it.